2:17 a.m. local time. Zagros Mountains, Western Iran. Elevation, 8,200 feet. 12 operators from SEAL Team 6's Gold Squadron move through a tunnel complex carved into solid rock. Night vision reveals concrete walls, electrical conduits, ventilation shafts. The tunnel descends at a 7-degree angle. Width, 12 feet. Height, 9 feet. Long enough to drive a truck through. They are 400 meters inside Iranian sovereign territory. The facility above them is designated Site 505 by U.S. intelligence, a hardened missile storage and launch complex operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force. Satellite imagery confirms the presence of Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missiles. Range, 300 kilometers. Payload, 650 kilograms, enough to hit U.S. or bases in Iraq, Kuwait, and the Persian Gulf. At 2:19 a.m., the lead element reaches a blast door. Hydraulic lock, 6-inch steel. The breacher places shaped charges on the hinges, not the lock. Precision, not force. The detonation is muffled by the mountain itself. The door collapses inward. Beyond it, a vehicle bay. Dimensions approximately 60 meters by 30 meters. Overhead lighting on emergency power. And 12 mobile erector launchers, TELs, parked in 2 rows of 6. Empty. No missiles. No warheads. No fuel trucks. Just the launchers themselves, stripped of their payloads and arranged in perfect formation, as though waiting for inspection. The team leader transmits a coded signal to the MC-130J Commando 2 holding station 20 miles outside Iranian airspace. 3 words: jackpot is dry. The operation was planned for missile seizure or destruction. The intelligence was 72 hours old and graded high confidence. But someone moved the missiles, and whoever moved them knew the Americans were coming. Before I explain how SEAL Team 6 got into that mountain and how they got out, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and comment below. Do you think the Iranians knew, or did the SEALs walk into a trap that hadn't been sprung yet? Because what happened in that tunnel over the next 40 minutes wasn't an extraction. It was a negotiation conducted entirely in silence, with both sides pretending the other didn't exist. Site 505 is not a random target. It sits 17 kilometers from the Iraqi border, positioned to strike U.S. forces at Al-Assad Air Base and Ain al-Assad. Iran has used Fateh 110 missiles against American positions twice in the past 4 years. Once in January 2020, following the Soleimani strike, and again in March 2022, during a consulate attack in Erbil. Both strikes were highly accurate. Both demonstrated that Iran can hit hardened targets with precision-guided munitions. And both were launched from mobile platforms that moved immediately after firing, making counterstrikes nearly impossible. The United States has been hunting these mobile launchers for 3 years. Traditional airstrikes don't work. By the time a drone or fighter aircraft reaches the launch site, the TEL has already relocated. Satellite surveillance is effective only if you know where to look. See, and Iran rotates its launchers through dozens of hardened sites across the Zagros range. Signals intelligence helps, but launch orders are transmitted via fiber optic cable, not radio. The only way to eliminate the threat is to destroy the missiles before they launch. That requires ground access. And ground access to Iranian military infrastructure requires capabilities that only a handful of units in the world possess. SEAL Team 6 is one of them. The mission was greenlit on March 11th, 72 hours before execution. Intelligence indicated that 12 Fateh 110 missiles had been moved into Site 505 for maintenance and fueling. The window of opportunity was narrow, 48 to 96 hours before the missiles would be dispersed again. The objective was straightforward: infiltrate the facility, and replace thermite charges on the missile bodies and guidance systems. Withdraw before Iranian security forces could respond. Estimated time inside the target, 18 minutes. Estimated casualties, 0. The plan assumed the missiles would be there. They were not. What Gold Squadron found instead was a facility that had been deliberately sanitized. The TELS remained because moving them would have triggered U.S. surveillance, but the missiles, the actual warheads, the fuel, the guidance packages, had been relocated within the previous 24 hours. Either U.S. intelligence was wrong about the timeline, or Iran knew the strike was coming and moved the assets just far enough to avoid destruction while leaving the infrastructure intact. The second possibility is worse, because if Iran knew, then someone told them. And if someone told them, the operation wasn't just compromised, it was anticipated. 2:23 a.m. Gold Squadron has been inside the facility for 6 minutes. The team splits into 2 elements. 4 operators secure the vehicle bay. 8 move deeper into the tunnel network, searching for secondary storage or concealed launch cells. The facility is larger than satellite imagery suggested. The main tunnel branches into 3 sub-passages, each leading to separate vehicle bays. Electrical systems are active. Ventilation is running. Somewhere deeper in the mountain, generators are operating at full capacity. At 2:26 a.m., the second element reaches the eastern bay. 3 more TELs, also empty. But this bay shows signs of recent activity. Hydraulic fluid on the floor. Tire tracks leading toward a sealed ramp that slopes upward toward the surface. The ramp is a concealed exit point. It doesn't appear on any blueprint. U.S. intelligence had identified 2 access points to Site 505, the main entrance, which is heavily fortified, and the tunnel the SEALs used, which was supposed to be a ventilation shaft. This ramp is a third option, and it's large enough to move a fully loaded TEL. The team leader makes a decision. They're not leaving until they know where those missiles went. At 2:31 a.m., one of the breachers discovers a control room built into the tunnel wall. Inside, 4 workstations, digital displays showing facility schematics, and a security feed monitoring the surface entrance. The feed is live. It shows 2 Iranian soldiers smoking near a guard post, unaware that 12 Americans are 400 meters below them. The SEALs pull data from the workstations, USB drives, all hard drives, anything that might contain transfer logs or movement orders. This is improvised intelligence collection, not part of the original mission profile. But the absence of the missiles has turned this from a direct action raid into a reconnaissance operation. At 2:35 a.m., motion sensors activate in the western tunnel. Someone, or something, is moving toward the vehicle bay from deeper inside the mountain. Gold Squadron goes silent. Weapons up. Night vision engaged. The sound resolves into footsteps. 2 individuals, moving slowly, not tactically. Flashlights, not night vision. Iranian maintenance crew unarmed, performing a routine inspection. The SEALs have 3 options: engage and risk alerting the entire facility, withdraw immediately and abort the intelligence collection, or wait and hope the Iranians don't notice 12 armed Americans standing in the shadows of their own missile bay. The decision is made without words. The team presses into the recesses of the bay, behind the TELs, using the vehicles themselves as concealment. The Iranians enter the bay at 2:37 a.m. They walk the perimeter, checking tire pressure on the launchers, inspecting hydraulic lines. One of them stops 6 feet from a SEAL operator. He's looking at a TEL that has a thermite charge already attached to its undercarriage, placed there before the team realized the missiles were gone. The Iranian crouches, examining the launcher's suspension. His flashlight sweeps across the floor. For 11 seconds, no one moves. The Iranian stands, says something in Farsi to his partner, and continues his inspection. At 2:41 a.m., both men exit the bay through the eastern tunnel. The SEALs remain motionless for another 90 seconds. Then the team leader makes the call. Exfiltration begins now. At 2:44 a.m., Gold Squadron begins its withdrawal. But the team leader makes a decision that contradicts standard operating procedure. He orders the thermite charges left in place, not activated, not removed. Left attached to the TELs, inert but visible to anyone who looks closely enough. The demolition specialist objects immediately. Leaving U.S. ordnance inside an Iranian military facility is a catastrophic operational security failure. If discovered, it confirms American penetration. It hands Iran physical evidence of a sovereignty violation. It justifies retaliation. The team leader's response is 2 words. That's correct. He doesn't explain further. The team complies. All charges remain attached to the launchers, 12 thermite devices, each stamped with manufacturing codes that trace back to U.S. military supply chains. The exfiltration proceeds without contact. At 3:09 a.m., Gold Squadron exits the tunnel complex through the same ventilation shaft they used for entry. By 3:22 a.m., they are aboard the MC-130J. By 4:11 a.m., they are outside Iranian airspace. The mission is classified as a failure. No missiles destroyed, no high-value targets neutralized. Intelligence collected, but at significant risk. Except that wasn't the mission. 72 hours later, U.S. signals intelligence intercepts a communication from Site 505 to IRGC Command in Tehran. The maintenance crew has discovered the thermite charges. Iranian military leadership convenes an emergency assessment. The question dominating their discussion is not how the Americans got in. The question is, why did they leave the charges behind? 3 interpretations emerge. First, the SEALs were interrupted and forced to abort before activating the devices. Second, the charges are still armed and set on a delayed timer. Third, the Americans wanted Iran to find them. The third interpretation is correct. By leaving the charges in place, the United States sent a message that operates on 2 levels. To Iranian military leadership, it says, "We can reach your most secure facilities whenever we choose." To the operational commanders at Site 505, it says, "You moved those missiles because you knew we were coming, and we know you knew." That second message is the real payload. If Iran moved the missiles based on advance warning, then U.S. intelligence has been compromised. But the SEALs still reached the facility undetected, still penetrated hundreds of meters into hardened infrastructure, still placed charges on military equipment, and still exfiltrated without engagement. The effectiveness of the warning is now in question. Iran knows the Americans are coming, but they can't stop them. That is a more dangerous problem than simple surprise. Within a week, IRGC Command issues new operational security protocols for all mobile missile units. Launchers are no longer stored in centralized facilities. Missiles are dispersed to smaller, more remote sites. Movement schedules are randomized. The entire system becomes more fragmented and harder to coordinate. Which was the goal? A fragmented missile network is less effective than a centralized one. Dispersed launchers take longer to coordinate. Randomized schedules create communication delays. Iran's missile forces are now more secure from American raids, but less capable of executing massed strikes. The SEALs didn't destroy 12 missiles that night. They disrupted an entire operational architecture, and they did it by doing nothing. Official U.S. statements made no reference to the Site 505 operation. CENTCOM press releases from mid-March focused on routine counterterrorism operations in Iraq and Syria. Iranian state media reported no security incidents at military installations, but internal assessments told a different story. 2 weeks after the raid, U.S. intelligence confirmed that Iran had relocated over 40 Fateh 110 missiles from hardened mountain facilities to dispersed forest positions in Loristan province. The new sites are harder to surveil and harder to strike, but they are also harder for Iran to manage. Coordination between launch units now requires multiple communication layers. Response time for a coordinated barrage has increased from 18 minutes to over an hour. The operational cost of that dispersal is significant. Iran's missile forces are less concentrated, which makes them less vulnerable. But concentration was their primary advantage. A dispersed force sacrifices overwhelming firepower for survivability. That trade-off favors the United States. At JSOC headquarters in Fort Bragg, the Site 505 mission is reclassified as a success, not because of what was destroyed, but because of what was changed. The Iranians now operate under the assumption that their most secure facilities are penetrable. That assumption forces them into defensive postures that degrade offensive capability. For Gold Squadron, the mission becomes a case study in adaptive decision-making. The original objective, destroy the missiles, was impossible. The fallback objective, collect intelligence, was partially successful. But the actual outcome, psychological disruption, was only possible because the team leader recognized that leaving evidence behind was more valuable than concealing the intrusion. That recognition required overriding doctrine. Standard procedure is to leave no trace. The team leader chose instead to leave a signature, not out of arrogance, out of calculation. Iran needed to know that the United States had been there. And more importantly, Iran needed to wonder why the United States didn't finish the job. The answer to that question is simple. Because finishing the job would have been a one-time event. Leaving it unfinished turns every future Iranian military operation into a potential target. Every missile movement becomes a risk. Every secure facility becomes suspect. The 12 launchers are still at Site 505. The thermite charges were removed by Iranian engineers 3 days after the raid, but the facility itself has been downgraded in strategic value. IRGC Command no longer stores high-priority assets there. It functions now as a decoy, a place designed to absorb attention while actual operations occur elsewhere. The United States knows this. Iran knows the United States knows. And that mutual awareness creates a new equilibrium. Iran can no longer centralize its missile forces without inviting American raids. The United States can no longer assume that visible infrastructure corresponds to actual capability. Both sides now operate in an environment of enforced uncertainty. That uncertainty is the new deterrent. The night of March 14th didn't prevent a missile strike. It recalibrated the conditions under which that strike could be executed. Iran still has the missiles. The United States still has the access. And neither side is certain what the other will do next. Which means the next time SEAL Team 6 enters an Iranian facility, the Iranians won't know if it's another message or the actual strike. If you want to see the operations that don't make headlines but change how wars are fought, subscribe to this channel. We'll show you what really happened.